Right. So we're going live on the cloud here in 5, 4, 3, 2. All right. Hello and welcome everyone to another Chat and Learn here with Power to Fly. My name is Mariella Marie, and as always, super excited to roll into this next hour with you all. I see some folks turning their cameras on, so thank you in advance. If you're just joining us, we believe in visibility here. We would love to see your beautiful faces. If you haven't showered today, it doesn't matter. If your background's a mess, it doesn't matter. Bring the humanity to the screen. Have your cats walk across the screen. We'd love that. We'd love to see the humanity behind the tech these days. So put your virtual backgrounds on if you're not comfortable showing your place, or show your mess. Bring your full self. We just love to see you. So no pressure, but we'd love for you to turn your cameras on. And before we kick off our introduction here, I just want to go over some housekeeping rules so that everyone feels comfortable and confident in this next hour. This hour is going to fly by super quickly. So I just want to stress that, you could be doing anything else. The world seems to be topsy-turvy, on fire, lots of crazy things going on. You're deciding to be with us live for the hour. So please participate. Participation is key. We really want you to maximize this hour with us. So again, turn your cameras on if you feel called to do so. I see you all already doing that, so I love that. Come off mute whenever you have something to share, a story, tips and tricks of your own, any anecdotes. Please, feel comfortable doing that. I just ask that we respect each other and have one person off of mute at a time. If not, go ahead and use the chat box at your leisure. You can drop any questions, reflections, dreams, tips and tricks into the chat box, and I'll flag that to our guest speaker and to the rest of our live callers. If you have any sensitive information and you prefer to be kept anonymous, you can find me in the chat box under Mariella Marie. You can write to me privately and I will keep you anonymous and flag your reflection or your question to our guest speaker. If you do hop off of mute, you will be featured in our live recording as this is being recorded. And with that said, I know we live in a world where everyone is multitasking, especially, if you are technologists here, you are, masters of multitasking, but I invite you to be present with us in this next hour, which means, turn your notifications off if you can, so that you can bring your questions and bring your full self to the next hour, because we really want you to maximize the time here. The last thing I'll say is we would love for you to follow us on socials so you can stay in tune with all the great things we've got coming up here at Power to Fly with all the virtual events. So let me just take a moment to introduce myself. If this is your first Chat and Learn, I just want to say hello and welcome. I have the pleasure of picking the beautiful minds of women and non-binary folks here on Power to Fly throughout the week. I love social impact initiatives. So, and I'm also obsessed with emotional intelligence. So you might hear me reference emotional intelligence throughout this conversation. If you're interested in emotional intelligence, in my opinion, there's not enough research about it. There's not many people speaking about it. So please bring your inquiries to the table there. I love to philosophize on that. And I would love for you all to support the project that I'm working on that is called the Positive Force Team. You can go to thepositiveforceteam.org and you can sign up for our newsletter, or you can connect with me on LinkedIn, and I'll be sure to drop those links in the chat in just a few moments. All right, with that said, I'm going to pass the mic to our guest speaker. Boski, let us know a little bit about yourself, how you came to learn about Power to Fly, and what you're excited to share with us today.
Absolutely. So Power to Fly came on my LinkedIn feed one day. And that's how I came to know about Power to Fly. I see Maura here as well. So I think we both were talking about it and she mentioned it. And as I started looking at Power to Fly and what, the community does, I felt that there was a lot of, I don't like the word synergy, but I guess there was a lot of alignment in quite a few things that I am passionate about and what I'm trying to do and what Power to Fly does. And hence we are here in this chat series. A little bit about myself. I'm currently based out of Vancouver in Canada. I'm a mom to a 6.5-year-old. And so that's been really a whirlwind lately, especially since pandemic hit with the schools and everything. But other than that, I come from a tech background. Computer science. I wanted to be an architect. I got admission in one of the top architecture universities. But I guess I don't blame my parents at all. But my parents were really, really good in convincing me that if I wanted to be successful in life, and their definition of success, I grew up in India, that there were only two potential career choices. And one was in technology and the other one was in medicine. And lo and behold, I was really, really freaked out about dissection or blood or any of those things. And so I loved biology in grade 2. And I was fortunate enough that my school did offer computers from grade 2 onwards. And so I started coding from grade 2, built quite a few different products, or I would say apps back then. But yeah, I came to, computer science, came to States to do my master's, and realized that I would suck as a developer. And I can talk about it as to why I believe that. And I transitioned into product immediately. My first role was in a 5-person startup, did everything from database design to everything possible. I asked for more and more work. And in 2 months, when they were building a product, I was given the opportunity to be a product manager. And this was almost 20 years ago. So yeah, my world has been more in tech and product for the last 20 years. I've worked in 6 different countries. I lived in Bermuda, the tiny island on the East Coast, braced hurricanes, have had 2 cats. Now I have a dog, a Labradoodle, and I am really passionate about making tech inclusive and accessible. And I'm the founder of PM Dojo, where I run a 10-week accelerator program to enable people who are interested to transition into tech, get that real world experience so that they can feel confident about kind of solving that chicken and egg problem, when they're looking to transition or break into tech. So that's me.
Beautiful. Thank you for that introduction. I just want to invite you also to share, as much of your journey as you feel comfortable sharing throughout this hour, because so intriguing and fascinating just to hear that in grade 2 you were developing apps. And of course, I'm a culture vulture. I love learning about different cultures, and I'm currently living outside of my home culture. We can say I'm in Argentina, and I know that we can probably rap about just how like culture shock, reverse culture shock happens, and how to bring your best self to the work. And inclusivity is key, especially when you start to live in different places in the world. So super fascinating story. Feel free to share more of your journey as we continue on with the questions. Before we move on to the next slide, how can folks connect with you offline when we finish this conversation? I'm also going to ask you in the end, but just in case someone needs to pop out early, where can we find you? How do you prefer us to contact you?
LinkedIn is the best, one of the best options. If you're not able to email me, because I know that it depends on the I guess the different tiers, you can always go to PM Dojo website. So it's www.pmdojo.me, and right at the bottom of the footer, you're going to find contact us. So you can send me an email through that if LinkedIn is not an option. If you do connect with me on LinkedIn, please try to kind of put a message in. I really request, just so that I can relate that, yes, we met here, and that'll just give me some context. Thank you.
Beautiful, beautiful. Okay, so before we roll into the questions that folks have submitted offline, can you just go over some of the key principles and themes that we'll be covering in the next hour?
Yes. So these are some of the things that I get asked a lot. As I am talking to people who are looking to break into tech or product or any of the roles in tech. Tech is huge. And so one of the things, I'm going to start from the right, don't know why, but I hear a lot about imposter syndrome. And I do want to see if we can actually talk about that, what it means, and also what it doesn't mean. And how can we, I wouldn't say solve it, but how can we actually start tackling it or thinking about it? Because there is a lot of, I guess, the way we mentally think about it that may prevent us from actually achieving success, right? I think we let imposter syndrome kind of completely drain us. So I had an aha moment through my mentor, and I would love to see if we can actually talk about that. The other one was the middle one, which is, what might be some actionable steps? So transitioning into tech, it can happen through a lot of different ways. There is no, one way. And so would love to kind of chat and see. I think there are lots of questions around that too, but what would be some of maybe 1, 2, 3 steps that you can take today to, kind of break into it, or perhaps set yourself to be more successful in breaking into it. And the third thing is just kind of understanding, what does job hunting, job search mean? I mean, the game, some people think it's kind of manipulative, but what does it mean? And what do you need to think about it also from the other side, which is from the hiring managers or the recruiters or the employers? And how can you position yourself so that you have better odds at kind of getting more success rates. So those would be the three themes that we discussed.
Beautiful. Thank you for that. And I know you wanted to, I'm going to take the share screen off here, and I recommend everyone put the speaker view on so that you can see whoever's speaking big and bright on your screen here. And Boski, I know you wanted to start off with kind of a survey to see where we are. And I know that folks are already writing that, so I love that. But just so Boski wants to know here, let's see what kind of roles you're looking to break into or pivot into. So for example, development, product management, design, customer success, data analysis, program management, others. So drop those in the chat box. And as you all drop that in the chat box, I'm just going to let you know what folks are already writing in the chat box, Boski, so you can keep this in mind as we roll through the questions. So again, Boski's calling from Canada. I'm calling from Argentina. We've got folks calling from Florida, Boston, the UK, and London. Go ahead and let us know where you're calling from if you hadn't had a chance to do that already. And before we went live here, we were asking folks to let us know a little bit about themselves. So I'm just going to verbally repeat that now so that it can encourage more folks to write, their experience. And then Boski, as you're tackling these questions, you can keep these in mind. So Mina writes, I'm currently a student in boot camp, so I'm focused on post-graduation steps. Isabel writes, hi, I'm from Boston. I'm a full stack developer in training at Code Squad, transitioning out of the nonprofit world. Adesha writes, I am looking to pivot into cybersecurity with a degree in finance. William writes, I am also in a boot camp and I would eventually want to work in the game industry, not necessarily video games, board games. Heather writes, hello from NYC, Bachelor of Arts in Philosophy, now looking to get into data analytics. RT writes, my previous career was in finance, now career transitioning into tech, and with no previous work experience, considering going into D365 finance, Business Central, and also doing some Microsoft certifications in Dynamics 365, Power Platform Fundamentals, Azure, etc. I have a private message here. I have a background in accounting. I feel comfortable in operations, but would love an opportunity to grow and pivot my career. I'm not sure what roles I should be applying for. If I'm looking to grow a career path would be helpful. Product manager, so then the response to the recent prompt that we did. So Melina writes product management, William writes development or design, Melina writes hi from Houston, Texas, hello, represent. Michelle writes interested primarily in program management and talent acquisition for now. We've got web-based app development, we've got front-end development at first, but I'm interested in utilizing my background in nonprofit management eventually. Product management, calling from Denver, hello from Atlanta. I'm a PM working to become more experienced in CRM design and implementation. Jen writes from New York City, transitioning project management and other field skills into customer service or PM and tech. Software, QA tester, great. I've been in hospitality management and with event management and would like to get into tech or PM. Awesome. So this is setting the stage. Yeah. I know some more folks are continuing to write, but let's roll into this first question. I know you wanted to kick off with this question, Boski. Do I need to go to dev bootcamp or know how to code to break into tech?
No. And it's hard coming from, someone who actually went to university and slogged for 6 years studying and learning everything about computer science, right? No, you don't. And I think there is a little bit of a caveat on that because I guess, so many years ago when I was starting out, so I come from a computer science background and the Boolean, zeros and ones was my life, right? And so that's how I actually started seeing the world. Everything was black or white and in absolutes. And I learned over the years that a lot, the world is full of shades of gray and it really depends. So when I say, no, you don't need to be a developer or have development background in order to be a product manager or to have a career in tech, it actually depends a little bit based on the different roles. It also depends on the products that the company has. So for example, if the product is highly, highly technical or the target users themselves are technical, you can imagine that if you're first time transitioning into tech in a specific role, especially non-development roles, it might make sense to understand and have a better empathy for your customers and target users, right? So I think that's where that little bit of struggle or barrier comes in. I also think that sometimes, unfortunately, there are internal preferences in certain companies as well, where they might want to perhaps hire folks from a certain background, right? From an educational or experience background. that's far and few. But if you were to kind of, if I were to answer this question, you don't. So I'll give an example. There are lots of different roles in tech, right? And we've seen out here in the chat window that people are coming from all different backgrounds. If you are passionate about, let's say, building products and you're looking at program management, product management, and those kind of roles, depending on the company, depending on the particular product, depending on the customers, you might very well not need to learn how to code. The roles of development and product management they're very different. You don't have to sit down and review code and things like that. You might have to have a very high level conceptual understanding of how software gets built, and that can be gained very easily. But these days, like what we do in PM Dojo when our participants are coming from all different backgrounds is that we actually use no-code tools. And no-code tools have been in existence for 7-8 years, right? And what they do is point, click, drag, and you're able to build production quality products with real users. So you don't really need to, but it's going to really depend on the kind of roles. If you're going for customer success, for example, that's a role in tech. You don't need to learn how to write code, but you need to be familiar enough and feel comfortable enough with using different tools, right? So you might have to use a customer success tool. You might have to use, like, for example, Salesforce. They don't need you to learn how to code, but familiarity and you have to be comfortable using the different tools. Hopefully that answers the question. That might bring some more questions later on.
Yes, thank you for that thorough response. I'm sure it will bring more questions. And in fact, Anna here writes in the chat box, do you recommend engineering certifications in my field of work, which is QA software tester?
It depends, I think, within tech, which particular sector you might be looking at. So for example, tech is huge. And pretty much all companies are now calling themselves, tech companies because technology is powering them, right? So for example, I'm assuming that this is software quality, assurance role, right? I don't believe, and I have never looked at certifications when I'm actually hiring. And I also have had conversations with several other hiring managers. We do not look at certifications. And I can be pretty confident, at least in North America and majorly parts of the developed world, right? We don't quite look at certifications because certifications don't quite tell us as hiring managers whether you would be able to apply. It's theoretical, most of those certifications. So no, unless and until the company specifically states that because of how we work, perhaps it's certain regulatory things and stuff like that, where there might be a special certification that you might need. And usually for those cases, what I've seen is that once you join, and if you do get offered, the company does put that as part of your personal development plan to get those certifications, right? But no, you really need to have that experience, right? Whether it is through, I don't like voluntary or unpaid kind of a thing, but if that's something that you can actually get an experience, or try to find some other ways to get that experience. But no, certifications are not quite necessary.
Thank you for that. And Anna, feel free to hop off mute if you want to clarify some of your questioning there. Feel free to do that at any time. I don't want to put you on the spot, but until then, I'll move on to the next question. Just let me know in the chat box if you want to come off mute, Anna. Okay, so let's move on to this next question here. How can we feel confident in breaking into this field with no experience?
So this is a reality, right? And something that, so I think about this a lot, right? Also because PM Dojo, where I work, we are actually trying to solve this, right? And I think about this a lot because this is a question that inevitably I get asked a lot as well. And the thing is, we all have faced this since ever, right? Where we've perhaps tried for a role that we've never worked before, whether it's promotion, whether it's the first time. So this has been happening forever. What's happening though right now is that just the current market dynamics is making it really, really challenging to be breaking that cycle, right? That chicken egg problem that you're talking about. So there are lots of different ways to do it. One would be to, depending again on the role, right? But usually for most parts, you can start building your own thing. right? There's nothing that stops us from starting our own initiatives, our own projects. The world is becoming more and more a creator's economy. And so we saw Mariella, she had her own project. She's building something, right? And what hiring managers really like to see when you're coming there, for interviews or having informational chats, you don't even have to wait till the formal request for interview, right? A lot of these informational chats, or even how you're showing up on LinkedIn or any of the different social channels, right, is that you are able to take an initiative, you're able to think through a problem, and you're able to kind of solve it. So there's nothing that stops us from working on a passion project or a side project or actually building a product. Now, depending on a specific role, you might have to approach this a little bit differently. So if you are really interested in let's say, product management, you don't want to just pick any side project, because product managers don't get paid for solving their own problems. A lot of times I see candidates, who come with 7, 8, 10 different side projects. And during interviews, when we kind of ask a very basic question, can you tell us who was having this problem and why? Like, I or my friend. I'm like, how many friends are you talking about? Oh, one friend. So I think, again, if you're trying for product management, you want to kind of make sure that you're picking a problem that exists in the market. If you're trying for software development, you may have to think about whether you want to try for open source contributions or whether you want to build something from scratch. Now, there are pros and cons to both, right? Open source, you're getting to kind of not start something from the scratch. You're going to be contributing code. You may have to work with another engineer or a developer. You'll have to kind of, and that shows different kind of skill sets. If you try to build something from ground up, then you want to make sure that, you are making those sound decisions. You don't kind of prolong it, because when you're working on your own project, sometimes not having a structure kind of forces you to kind of extend it for too long. What else? I would say, like, these are some tangible ways. Look for other opportunities where you might actually volunteer. Come and join PM Dojo. I'm going to just put in a plug there. Come and check us out. In 10 weeks, you get mentorship and you work as a team, which pretty much mimics how the real world works. And you actually are able to launch a product, a web app or a mobile app in 10 weeks, right? So, that could be an opportunity for you if you want to kind of work and learn with like-minded people. Like, that's another opportunity for you to think about. And, write about it. I think journaling and sharing your journey as you're building it or as you're kind of working through problem solving is so huge, even if we feel that we might not be an expert, because you might just be out there inspiring someone who may be just even 2 steps behind you. And that's what catches, the eyes of the hiring managers and employers. A lot of times roles get filled without even them getting posted. I've had my fair share of experience. I've also seen that happen to a lot of people. So you want to come into the radar of companies who are hiring, and they want to see people who are ready to take initiative. So hopefully, that kind of helped. And No Code, please check out No Code, because if you're someone who's non-technical or interested in tech but don't know how to code, you can actually build production quality products from ground up using No Code. So you please do not feel like you need to go to school to learn how to code.
Yes, I love this. I love this. Thank you for the resources. Thank you for the encouragement. And just because I love to try to connect any kind of dots to emotional intelligence that I can. I love that you're speaking about empathy. Empathy is huge, and we are lacking so much of it in this crazy world. So I love that you're using, the grounding of empathy as you create products to solve problems, and not just to create more problems or, solve problems superficially, let's say. I also love that you mentioned journaling. Journaling brings about so much self-awareness and also self-regulation. So then you can understand your boundaries, your values, your belief systems, and know when you might be, pushing the boundaries, and maybe, that will take you into a tumble of, imposter syndrome that I really want to hear you talk about, because you spoke about that in your introduction, and it's such a hot topic these days. And I'm really interested in hearing your opinion. Actually, why don't we start now? What do you think about imposter syndrome, and talk about whatever you want to talk about there?
Imposter syndrome. I don't know if I'm going to be opening a can of worms, but I'll just say it. So imposter syndrome has existed since ever, right? Maybe we didn't have a term for it before, definitely not when I started out in my career. I think it's just gaining a lot of traction these days, right? And a lot of people are talking about it. But I struggle with it every single day, even though I'm talking about it, but I struggle every single day. I mean, there's going to be things where, I find someone else has probably cracked it, or I'm trying for something and someone else kind of did it before me, or even like right now, I'm very introvert and I don't like to see myself on the camera. So my stomach is churning right now. As I'm looking at Mariel, I'm like, how does she do this? How does she do this? And I don't feel like looking at the camera. Like I'm trying to find different places to look at as I'm talking with all of you. So something that my mentor told me a few years ago, because I was really, really suffering. So I'll give you a story. I'll share a story if you don't mind. And that's when, I think that's when I kind of at least attempted to think about imposter syndrome with a rational brain versus my heart. And that's where things started making a little bit of sense. So a few years ago, as I mentioned, I'm a mom to a 6.5-year-old. So a few years ago, my son was barely 4, and I was offered to be promoted as the president of the company after taking over from the founder and CEO. Throughout my career, I had kind of dreamt about leading a company, right? But when the time came, I had all of the doubts, like why me? I joined the company 3 years ago. There are other people in the executive team. So I was already part of the executive team as the director of product, but there are already other people who have been in the company for 10 years, 15 years. I don't know this industry that much enough. Like, why me? I also have a little one at home. Will I be able to do this? What if I fail? What if people dislike me? Because I was responsible for doing a major cleanup in the company. And so we had to completely rebuild the entire company. And there were a lot of layoffs that happened, unfortunately, because of that. So for me, all of those self-doubts kept on coming, right? And I was almost close to saying, no, I don't want it. I'm going to just say no. But then I also believed naively that saying no to a career opportunity meant that I would never be offered again. And I wish I knew something better at that time, because that was the biggest mistake of my life. In hindsight, perhaps not so much, but it did cause a lot of tumble in my personal life and professional life. So, I accepted. And I lived in this, days and nights of self-doubt. And I wasn't comfortable with anything. I would feel really uncomfortable going and speaking in the all hands of the company, because our CEO, the founder from whom I had taken over the company, he was a complete extrovert. He would like dance and sing, and I would just, be the total opposite. So anyway, I ended up with a complete breakdown, mentally, emotionally, and physically in 2019. I was diagnosed with PTSD. My personal vitals had gone so bad that my doctor said she had never seen this in her 30 years of career. And she basically gave me an option of whether I want to live. And if I wanted to live, even, maybe for the next few months, like she gave me 3 months, like if I want to live for the next 3 months, I need to change drastically the way I was working and the way I was kind of thinking about work. And there are quite a few other things that happened that prompted me to start kind of reflecting. And I talked with one of my ex-bosses when I was working in the Bay Area. I reached out to her and I talked with her. And what she told me was that, she talked about this imposter syndrome. And what she said is, imposter syndrome is real. And imposter syndrome is a natural feeling. It's a natural emotion. And if you don't have that, Bosky or Boski, different people call me by different names. My parents pronounce my name as Boski. So she said, if you don't have, or if you didn't have imposter syndrome, you would end up becoming this cocky jerk. And so use imposter syndrome to prevent you from crossing that threshold of becoming this overconfident, cocky jerk. And know that when you get that, you're just feeling uncomfortable. And take the time to think, because this confidence or this trust issue only comes when you're trying to try to push yourself, grow exponentially. So don't let it think like it's something that you have to solve, you have to remove from your life. Just kind of learn how to embrace it. Now, that sounded great, right, as a way to reframe. But when it does happen to me, I struggle, because my immediate reaction is when I start thinking from the heart and I start panicking and I start doing all of that. So what I've learned right now is when I get that feeling, on most days, I do try not to react, and I just try to kind of find a way to just maybe go for a walk or just talk with my dog or anything like that. And then let my rational brain kick in, where I actually can tell myself, the fact that I'm not becoming a jerk, like this is something that's just natural. So I think there's a lot of conversation right now and discussions right now on how we need to beat it and how we need to kind of prevent it, how we need to solve it. And for me, I think I almost treat imposter syndrome as let it be and ask yourself, what does this tell me and what I might actually do next in order to solve the problem? Because most problems are solvable. It might take a little bit of a different route or a creative route. That help?
Absolutely. I want to thank you for sharing your story. I know that someone out there needed to hear this, and I know that you didn't have to necessarily share this part of your journey, but it's so important. Visibility is key, transparency is key, authenticity. It's all these things that I hope will lead us to, a more inclusive space, and that's exactly what you're doing. So I love that you're rocking this, by the way, Boski. I know that you're saying you're an introvert, but I know you're trying to find other places to look on the wall, but you are rocking it. I'm so confident in what you're saying. I want to continue getting to know you after this conversation, as I'm sure some folks who are listening live will go to your website and support the things that you're doing. So I just want to congratulate you on all of the things that you're doing past that, crazy time with your young one as well, and with work. I know that a lot of times we feel like we're in between a rock and a hard space, especially when we have, this overwhelm of emotion that comes up, which is why I'm so obsessed with speaking about the importance of emotional intelligence, right? To learn about self-regulation and the social skills that are needed, but also knowing when you need to be alone and that solitude and intimacy with yourself. So yes, I for me, it was very clear, that response. I'm so happy that you dove in deep there on imposter syndrome. And I mean, I would love to also know, we do a lot of research here at Power to Fly, and one of the pieces of research that was really fascinating to me, and I hope that we're getting better at this, is that statistically speaking, women are less likely to apply for roles if they don't meet 100% of the requirements. And how I'm sure within that, you have some imposter syndrome that is being induced there. It's like, oh no, I can never, do this public speaking or whatever it has to do. So I'm not going to do it because I don't meet 100% of the requirements. Do you have any advice for folks who are reluctant to apply because they don't meet 100%?
So I've done that too, many, many, many times. Although I've been told by all of my mentors that no, that's not what it is. So I'm going to share again another story of what happens on the hiring side, if that kind of helps, right? So I'll give an example. And I talked with quite a few different hiring managers, and they actually concurred with, this might very likely happen. I'm not saying that this happens all of the time. So the idea is that you want to look at job descriptions with a grain of salt, right? Always, because what has happened quite a few times with me is that, so I'm hiring manager, right? I want to fill a role. I'm busy. I ask someone from the recruitment team, I said, hey, I'm actually filling this role. And let's say I'm filling a junior developer, or I'm filling a junior PM, whatever the role is, right? Customer success, whatever it was. Can you please kind of get a job description ready so that and post it, right? And I get asked, is this like a new role or do we already have it? Let's just say. And I said, we should have this because we've kind of hired this before, hired for this role. So yeah, please post it. And then if you get candidates and review them, and then please pass them my way. And then we'll kind of start the interview process. I might have my team members start the interview process, or someone else, or maybe I just jump in, depending on the stage of the company. If the company is really small and we have a really small team, maybe I get, just start the interview process. So what has happened a number of times I've been surprised, is that I've specifically said, I'm looking for a junior role. And someone contacts me because they might know me, and they're like, hey, I'm really interested to work in your team in this company. It's a junior role, but it's asking for 5 years experience or 3 years experience. How is it like I'm not even going to be applicable? I'm like, hey, but I'm looking for like a junior role. I'm not looking for experience. And then I go and look into the job description. And then I'm like, gee, this is an old job description that existed and someone just forgot to change it. So that has happened quite a few times, which is why I say, I'm not saying this has been done maliciously, right? It's a human error, a user error.
And people are busy all the time, to your point. People are juggling a million things, and unfortunately they left one thing that could have been better left out of the job description, and that person is holding on to it as if it's the world.
Perhaps it was my bad as a hiring manager that I said I haven't, I want to review every single job description that goes out, right? I think we can kind of keep on pointing fingers, but that's not the point. The point is that such things do happen, and they've happened a few times in my lifetime so far. And so when you're looking at job descriptions, of course, I'm not saying that if a role specifically says you need like 15 years experience doing X, Y, Z, and I have nothing, I'm going to still apply, right? I think that's where, of course, we're going to use our judgment and things like that. But when you feel like you meet most of the criteria or a few of the criteria, kind of put that grain of salt lens and say, okay, what if I were to apply? Because if you don't apply, there is no shot, right? But if you do apply, maybe, just maybe, there is a shot. But the other thing in that is that when you're actually applying, please don't just submit your resume online and then wait for some magic to happen, because what is happening, what has always happened, but what is happening even so more these days, especially post-COVID, is that we know, unfortunately, there have been a lot of people who have been displaced, right, by work, right, since the pandemic started, especially since the pandemic started. And so when you are applying for roles or you want to apply for roles, know that you're not just competing with people who might be at the same place as you, but you're also competing with people who may have already done the role that you're applying for and perhaps are now out of job because of XYZ reason. So your competition has just increased. And so I also work as an advisor with quite a few different tech companies, helping them build and grow their teams and kind of operationalizing product and engineering and those kind of things. And so when I'm looking at resumes to help them hire, I typically block out the name. And that's just something that I personally do because we all have our biases. I'm not going to deny that. We all have it. And I just need something that consciously I'm not kind of thinking about it. And that's something that I really do it as a rule. And so when I block out the name and I'm looking at resumes, unfortunately, most of the resumes start looking very, very similar, because we already have a lot of resources these days on what you need to do for a good resume, right? You don't want to kind of write an essay. You want to put, bullet points, brief bullet points. You want to have an impact. You want to kind of share your accomplishments. So most people have fortunately learned how to do a good resume. And then most resumes look similar, right? So if you're thinking that you're going to just apply and submit a button, and then somehow people are going to actually notice, given that the competition has just probably quadrupled, it's not going to help. So this is where you want to start really thinking about how else you might actually reach out to people, even for informational chats, but do it in a way, and we can talk about it, but do it in a way where you may try to maximize how people might actually get back to you, right? Just sending a LinkedIn connection request and say, hey, I'm interested in this job, can we talk? No one's going to actually want to talk, right? Relationship is always like a two-way street. And even in job search, it's a two-way street. So it's really important to, I guess, empathize and understand the needs of your other side of the equation, which is, your target user here are your hiring managers, recruiters, and companies, and kind of empathize with them and maybe kind of bring about even how you might be able to help, right? Start engaging with people before you need a job, engage with their content that they publish and not just like it, kind of engage with it and try to bring something that you might have read about them or something that you're passionate about. Try to find something common. It takes effort and it's not going to work 10 out of 10 times, but it might work 5 out of 10 times. You'll be surprised.
Yes, great. Thank you for that that thoughtful reflection and response. I know we have someone who wants to hop off mute. Anne, do you want to go for it?
Yes, hi. Hi.
Hi.
I just have a quick question. I did place it on the chat regarding I am a QA tester, and I know that I've been looking for a lot of those positions, and a lot of them are looking like for engineers. And I'm saying, my question was, is that something that would be necessary to get that certification in the engineering side of it?
When you say engineering, are you talking about like software engineering, or are you
Software
talking?
engineering. Yes, I'm sorry. Yes.
No worries. So there are different kinds of software, like QA roles. There are some QA roles which are more on like manual testing, so QA testing. There are some roles where you actually need automation testing. And then there are again some roles which are specifically called software quality engineer, right? So there are different roles in tech. So what is, again, it's a really broad question. I don't know what your background is and where you're based out of, what kind of companies you're applying. More and more companies are actually going after automation, right? But I'm not saying that a lot of companies are going. So
Right.
they're the companies who are potentially more in the startups or mid-size, they will not have automation. They are going to rely on manual testing. And that's where you will actually have software quality assurance roles, which don't need the SQE, which is the software quality engineering roles. Even for a software quality engineering role, you don't need to have an engineering certification per se. But when you are an engineer within software quality assurance, because you may have to actually write scripts and things like that, perhaps having some knowledge on scripting languages might help, because you would actually have to write batch scripts and things like that. But really kind of figure out which kind of quality assurance roles you are really interested in, right? A lot of times companies do hire folks who can actually manually like do manual tests, and over time build that skill for automated testing. So hopefully, Anne, that helps. So start looking for some of the smaller and mid-sized companies. I don't know which kind of companies you're looking at. Does that help?
Yes, thank you so much. That's a really great idea, just to start looking for the smaller companies
Yeah.
that, get involved. They are hiring, I guess, for the software tester, because like you're saying, there are different types of testers, and some of them do require different types of skill sets. So,
yes. And something to think about is that if you think about the makeup of a typical development team, um, you know, again, I'm talking about rule of thumb. Some companies kind of completely break this rule of thumb. I've seen like quite a few different variations of the structure in engineering teams. I've seen some places where you have 4 to 5 devs, and you may have one QA within that dev team. Sometimes I've even seen 7, 8 devs, and I've seen one QA. And sometimes I've also seen dev teams where there is no QA, and the quality assurance is basically handled by the different developers, where they're not kind of testing their own code, of course, but then that's where they actually have the automated testing, when it actually goes out. So you may want to think again, right? Like if quality assurance, so again, I think this comment might put me into trouble, but there is something that, and this was again something that one of my mentors shared with me. She said, it's really great that you have a dream and you're aspiring to reach that goal, but sometimes you also have to be pragmatic about your goals. So what is the reality? So if right now the job market is such that companies are not hiring for QA, that might happen, right? I'm not completely kind of in queue with all the different hiring that's taking place in QA. But if you're starting to see that there are certain roles where companies are not hiring that much, then if quality assurance or QA or a certain role is your dream kind of destination, what might be these small little pivots that you might want to take now that might still kind of let you reach that goal, but perhaps not the direct? Because you cannot solve that external problem if companies are not hiring for a certain role, right? And
Right.
so could you actually go into a different role? So I see a lot of people from quality assurance also go into tech support. I see a lot of, and I'm not saying take like a step down completely. There might be some very, very interesting roles right now in tech that go where these kind of skills are needed. You might actually even try to transition into a product owner role. You might try to transition yourself into a project management role. And then kind of think about when the market actually kicks up, then you actually try to look for roles when actually those kind of roles actually start getting hired a lot more.
Thank you. Thank you so much. That was very helpful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you for coming off mute and asking your question here. And I see we've got some more questions in the chat box. We've got a little over 10 minutes left, so I'm going to try to get to as many as we can. I'm loving all of this wealth of information that you're dropping today, Boski, so I appreciate you.
Thank you.
So I have a private message here. This is a follow-up question. That was a great feedback on how to build connections. Do you have suggestions for who are the best folks within an organization to contact for info interviews? Do you want to go for one who is on the team you're most interested in, who you suspect is a hiring manager, go for a recruiter, etc.? I've started having great informational interviews with folks I'm connected to through my network, but I'm wondering how to do that when I don't have an in at a company, knowing that maybe I don't have anything to offer someone at the time and they're all busy people whose time I want to respect.
Yes, great question. I don't have a recipe. Unfortunately, I wish I had. And if I had, I would probably be making a lot of money these days. Unfortunately, I don't have a recipe, but I can share what has worked for me and where things haven't worked. I've actually tried all venues. I typically start, so it depends again at what level the role is. I think that's something that goes with saying, right? So if I'm trying for, let's say, a junior mid-level role, reaching out to, let's say, the CEO might not make sense, but it also depends on how big the company is. If it's a small startup, you might actually have a better sense reaching out to the CEO, because likely the CEO or the co-founder or the founder is making most likely most of the decisions, and he or she may direct you to the next person. So I almost kind of, when I reach out personally, and I do reach out many times, I'm kind of keeping the door open, right? And I say, hey, if you're able to help, great, but could you maybe point me to someone else who might be able to kind of help me here, right? So I leave that open. If the company is mid-size and large, and you can easily get that information from LinkedIn, right? How many employees are there, what the size is. You can go to Crunchbase and all of these different sites that might give you some idea for how big the company is, at what stage. And that's where you may have to make some educated guesses. I actually start reaching out to, again, I might try to reach out a particular team member, and I go with zero expectations. And I've kind of learned this again the hard way, because it used to hurt me a lot that I'm spending time to compose these messages and not a single person is replying. And so I go with zero expectations, but I try all venues. I give it some time so that I don't seem like I'm a person so desperate I'm just reaching out to everyone in a company, because people do talk internally. So try with maybe a team member. You can try with the HR or the recruitment team. You can try with the hiring manager. A lot of times, especially on LinkedIn or Angel List, you can actually see the person who's hiring or who's posted the job. You can also reach out to them. You can actually, but when you reach out to them, try to do a little bit of a detective work on what they're up to. Whether it's Hacker Noon, Medium, whether it's LinkedIn, take a look at their activities, take a look at, which events they might be attending or things like that, to at least get a picture of, who they are, and what do they talk about and what do they care. So I would say, in order to reach out, try every venue, but first decide or try to get a sense of how big the company is, because it's no point trying to reach out to a CEO if the company is like 500, 700 people, because they may not reply. But if it's a small startup, obviously, I think reaching out to a CEO might actually help you. I've been surprised how many times I've actually gotten replies on LinkedIn. I've also been very hurt on more number of times when I haven't gotten any reply. But I try all venues, really, all venues.
I love that response. And just to, to highlight, you got to put time in and to be kind to yourself. Don't have any expectations. Don't be hurt if no one responds, but to put in the time, get your coffee, get your playlist going, and just dedicate that time to send out. That's awesome. Thank you for that.
And I'll share an example. So someone reached out to me. And they basically, so they were, the message that came was that, hey, I love this role that you were actually hiring for in a few weeks, or no, I loved this talk that you had given, and I'm really kind of interested to look something around that. And I hadn't given that talk, right? So it was basically a copy paste. So I know we all do copy paste. I have done tons of mistakes, copy paste. So please, this is your one shot. So it's, I think, also important to understand job search is a hard thing. It often feels like a full-time job to be searching for jobs. If you want to do everything possible to have the best stab at it, dedicate maybe an hour if you want every day. Don't leave searching for jobs and reaching out to people for the weekends. I've done that, and I've kind of greatly kind of repented after that. My husband does the same thing. We keep job search for the weekend. By the time there are 1,000 applications already, and by the time you may reach out, you're going to be like so down at the bottom of their to-do list that no one's going to even look at it. So jobs are coming, and within a few minutes, they're receiving hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of applicants. So make sure that if you're actively searching for a role right now, dedicate at least an hour of your day where you basically focus on it, and you're having your resume ready. Like, don't wait for an opportunity to come and then start trying to work on your resume. Have these things ready so that when an opportunity comes, you're ready to go.
Yes, thank you for that. I love that you could dive in deeper with that story. And I know we've all kind of stepped on our own feet when we don't quality assure our own, reach outs. And then we're like, won't do that again. Okay, so we do have about 6 more minutes, and I have a couple messages here.
Okay.
I don't know if we'll get to all of them, but I do before we get to the end of this conversation, just be sure to reach out to Boski on her platform so that you can get your questions answered. Corey writes, first off, I'm definitely looking up your 10-week apprenticeship, so thank you. I'm an aspiring product. I'm an aspiring product manager. Do you think an MBA is required? I feel like I've been seeing that more and more in job descriptions.
Whoa. So, I did my MBA and I did my computer science. And here I'm telling you, no, you don't need any of these things. I wish. So no, you don't need an MBA. What is happening? So again, it is going to depend on where you are, in your journey. There is, of course, a lot of campus recruitment that happens. There's also a lot of internships that actually come through universities. So, it's never black and white. So if you are in a university studying, please make sure that you're kind of positioning yourself and getting ready for those internships where companies do come, right? And those opportunities do come up. But I'll tell you something. So I did my MBA, and the reason why I did my MBA was because I came from a tech background, and I needed to fill that business gap that I had, right? Now, as I did my MBA, and I did it, about, I would say 6-7 years ago. So it's not been like as long as my engineering, but what I found was that so as I was in the program, right? So let's say I'm studying finance, because that was one of those big things, right? Like I need to understand the dollar and the money speak so that I can have conversations with the senior business leaders. When I was actually my core module, my elective, and all of those, let's say in financial management or management accounting, I was learning all of the things that would perhaps position me in some of the more traditional roles, and perhaps be able to speak to more of the accountants and the finance folks in my company. But as I grew in my career, let's say director of product in a tech company, I had to think about money in very different ways than actually a typical P&L statement. right? I had to think about growth. I had to think about how can I relate churn, like the customers who are leaving the product, and how does that relate with where that money is going? How can I think about that's not taught in financial accounting. So did I actually want to become an accountant or actually have conversations with an accountant, or did I actually have to think about how do typically SaaS businesses make money, right? So could I have learned that a 101 of financial accounting elsewhere rather than spending that much money and 2.5 years? Yes. So ask yourself that question, right? I do not believe you need an MBA. Companies might be putting that in the job ad, but if you've heard, I think what I was answering before, those job ads, please take that with a grain of salt. The only reason why they put that MBA statement a lot of the times is because they want someone who's able to understand business, especially if you are in a role of a product manager or a program manager or any kind of roles that is interfacing a lot with your business users or the business side of things. You need to understand, the business kind of aspects, right? What is the strategy? How does business make money? How does business lose money for that context, right? So is an MBA going to give you that? Perhaps no. But once you get into like what else can you do to actually understand a lot of those, we do cover that in our product accelerator program. So whoever's interested, please reach out to me and I'm happy to kind of share that with you. But no, the short answer is you don't need an MBA for most part.
I love that you are, I mean, it's just the dichotomy of like, I did this, but you don't have to do this. And the transparency of that, because I find that, after spending all that money, all that time, all the things that it takes to, take time off to study. But then you see, I mean, the world of technology is changing every minute. And so, even like I have a friend now who's studying psychology, and right when the pandemic hit, like even this, like the teachers in her program were like, we really don't know.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
We're passing the ball to like, we're all discovering this in the moment. And I feel like within the tech world, that same thing is happening. Not enough people are being as transparent about it. So I respect your transparency here by clearing that up. So we've got about 2 minutes left. Please leave us with some food for thought and let us know how we can connect with you online. I'm also going to drop your link, your website here, but if you can mention your LinkedIn again and any other ways you prefer for folks to contact you, because I got some private messages making sure you repeat this in the end.
Awesome. Food for thought. Have faith. Have faith. Find your support system. That's huge. It sounds cliche, but it is really, really, really important. The road to your career growth and what success means is very different. So please do not let how society defines success to be your definition of success. I learned it the very hard way, and it took me 38 years to learn that. To the point where my life was in danger and my little 4-year-old was asking me why I don't love him anymore. So, life is much more important than titles. I completely get the Maslow's hierarchy where money is important. I'm struggling with that myself. I'm being totally honest here. I'm not making the paycheck that I used to make. I'm just fortunate I have a very caring and understanding husband. We'll see for how long he remains that. But you have to kind of think about yourself, your health, before you start kind of thinking about anything else. And these are, again, such cliche things, but it is astonishing how people forget. Tell your story and talk to people, because you never know who you might inspire and where you might find your tribe. So that would be my food for thought.
Yes, well, you have definitely inspired me. The hour went by super quickly. I'm so happy that our live callers could drop their reflections and questions in the chat box. I dropped the link there so that folks can go to her website and check out all the beautiful things she's up to. I know we've got some folks who are already going to sign up for your apprenticeship, so that's beautiful. And LinkedIn as well, you said, but make sure if you contact Boski on LinkedIn, let her know that you watch this chat so that she can put some context there. I really appreciate and respect your transparency and your encouragement, Boski. I'm excited to continue getting to know you when we finish this conversation. And I invite folks who are listening now to continue to connect with Boski when we finish. Thank you, everyone, and we'll see you on the next Chat and Learn.
Thank you. Bye-bye.